So as you guys know, I recently unboxed the OnePlus 8 Pro, and that's not the only device that OnePlus put out. They put out a standard OnePlus 8 with a small price discrepancy, coming in $100 cheaper and with a very similar spec list. So since I went into great detail on the OnePlus 8 Pro, it only makes sense to do a comparison here between the OnePlus 8 and the OnePlus 8 Pro, the Pro brother of the standard OnePlus 8. So anyways, I'm gonna have this one on standby, and let's jump inside the box and take a closer look at the standard OnePlus 8. Now, this one is in the Interstellar Glow color, 12 GB RAM, 256 ROM. There's two variations of each of the Pro and non-Pro model. You can either get 8 gigs of RAM or 12 gigs of RAM, and that's a $100 upgrade. I am excited to check out this Interstellar Glow color. Of course, I had that really nice looking blue on the OnePlus 8 Pro. The packaging is identical, by the way. The box, the new OnePlus logo, as you can see. Greeted by your OnePlus paperwork. Also in here, you're going to have some stickers. They gave you a whole sticker setup this time around. Here is the device. I'm gonna put it to the side for just a moment. Also in the package, you have your USB cable, OnePlus special USB cable, red with white tips, Type-C, and then there's a warp charge power brick also in the package. So this is missing some of the things that came in the Pro model package, including a freebie case. Now, one of the differences between this device, whoa, check out the Interstellar Glow. I think that might be a cooler, even more cyberpunk setup than the blue that I got on the Pro model. I'm also noticing right away that this is way lighter than the Pro model. What? Oh my goodness, look at the mirror finish on this thing. Okay, this couldn't be more different than the Pro model. This thing is reflective. It's like one of the most reflective phones I've ever seen. I'm gonna get a reflection. There's me. This is wild. This thing is gonna shimmer. It's gonna collect fingerprints, but it is like 500 different colors in one. Wow. Now the package, like I said, it strikes you right away just how much lighter it is than the Pro model. Look at this. Now from a form factor perspective, they're very close, but weight-wise, you do notice a difference, and also thickness. The other thing you're gonna pick up on is the camera hump, or lack thereof, on the non-Pro model. It's a little bit more slender, and I don't know, call me crazy, I might say in my hand that the non-Pro model actually has a slightly more luxurious feel. Is that wild? Is that crazy? I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just this weight ratio and the balance of the thing, but that is a very cool color. Interstellar Glow. It's like 500 different colors in it. I'm seeing pink, I'm seeing blue, I'm seeing gold for sure, depending on the angle with which you look at it. Now, yes, it's cool looking. Yes, it has a nice balance to it, but it does not have all the features that the Pro model has in it. And one of the big ones that's missing here that I'm a big fan of, or at least I'm really excited to try out on the Pro model, is this warp charge over wireless charging. So yes, they of course include a warp charge power brick, which is gonna get this thing to 50% charge in like 20 minutes, maybe a little over 20 minutes. But OnePlus, of course, they debuted this warp charge wireless charging, which in 30 minutes is going to give you 50% of your charge on the Pro model, which also happens to have a slightly larger battery than the one you've got in the non-Pro. But anyways, what can you expect here? You're dealing with a smaller form factor phone that's lighter in the hand. It's going to have a smaller battery in it. Moving around the device, we have our USB port at the bottom, Type-C connector. You have your volume rocker over on the other side, and then you have the famous textured OnePlus programmable switch. You have a power button in that location. This feels crazy comfy in my hand. The front of the device, slightly lower resolution display than the Pro model. Similar camera cutout in the top corner. Why don't we just boot it up? Let's go ahead and do that. Very quick setup there. Let's check out the display. So another thing I should mention, one of the drawbacks of going with the non-Pro model, you only get a 90 Hertz display compared to a 120. Now, whether or not your eyeballs can pick up that difference, it seems to be a personal thing. Of course, I covered it in a recent video. I showed the difference actually between 60 hertz all the way up to 144 hertz with 90 and 120 in between. So you can go watch that, see if you can spot the difference. But the Pro model on the left here, slightly bigger in dimension, slightly higher resolution display, and 120 hertz, which for me, that's just too much of a list to ignore for $100 more. But I could see some people opting for the non-Pro model just because they want something a little bit more manageable in a single-handed scenario. It's evident to me just popping it out of the box. This is going to be set up for 90 hertz out of the box, I believe. If we click the display settings here and look into advanced screen refresh, 90 hertz out of the box. And just like on the Pro model, you can knock that back to 60 hertz if you would prefer greater battery life. Now, another thing to mention with the non-Pro model, seeing as how it has a slightly less large camera bump, there isn't as much wobble to it on the back. This has to be maybe the largest OnePlus camera bump that I've seen on any of their devices. Of course, it's the trend in 2020, but this one, the non-Pro, a little more typical to what you're probably comfortable with at the moment. So again, I think the message here with this particular device is the trim and slim form factor, the slim version of the Pro model. Now, the other big difference between these devices is the camera setup. You're giving up the telephoto camera if you go for the non-Pro model, but you do have your ultra wide in there, and you have a dedicated macro camera, which, as you guys know and I demonstrated in the Pro model video, that can be really fun to use creatively, get up close to certain subjects and objects. Now, on the Pro, the wide angle lens is going to double as your macro camera. Then on the non-Pro model, your macro camera is going to be dedicated. So it's sitting there on its own and you lose out on the telephoto. Where do I stand on this? I think if you're going to have to select between having an ultra wide and a telephoto, you take the ultra wide if you're forced to pick between the two. Of course, if you step up to the Pro, you're not forced to choose. You get to have both that are in there, but it's at the expense of this much larger camera hump. When I hold these into profile, you can see trust me, it's bigger. Now, from a horsepower perspective, they should be comparable. Of course, we're talking about Snapdragon 865, and you'd have to get that chip given the price point of either of these two devices. Let's launch into the camera real quick, and why don't we actually shoot the Pro model from the non-Pro here. So what do we end up with? Well, as you can see, by default, we step out the gate at the 1x perspective. We can bounce out to the wide perspective. And interestingly, I didn't see any color shift in the white balance on this model like I saw on the Pro model. So the super macro mode is up here in the interface, identified by this little icon, this little flower icon. To me, it doesn't seem like a massive improvement. Turn off super macro and just bounce into the zoom. I think I actually get a better result on there. So this is your 2x zoom, and to me, it's about as detailed and about as magnified as that macro setting that's on here. That's the macro there. In fact, I might even prefer the 2x for a close-up here in this particular environment, which is strange. Much like I was able to show off in the Pro model video, you're seeing detail in the table here. Now, as far as the main camera is concerned, nice detail, sharpness, and we've also got the ultra wide baked in, which is not as wide as the Pro model. Now, the selfie that I shot on the Pro model, it was scary, that selfie. It was particle level. It was showcasing all kinds of detail, tremendous detail with the beauty mode turned off. I was really impressed by that. Let's see if this one can replicate. Of course, this is a well-lit environment. Yes, I think it has effectively replicated beard hair test off the charts. I can see the focus peaking on the lens just lighten up like a Christmas tree. That's a good sign. Selfie performance should be suitable, should be acceptable to you, and probably give you more detail than you want to see of yourself. That was definitely the case on the Pro model, and believe it or not, that's what I like to see. I like to see the detail to the point where you can appreciate every line and little wrinkle and so forth. That's part of being a technology enthusiast, even if you have to look at your ugly self. You understand? That's how it works. Now, the speaker setup was pretty good on the Pro model. How about on the non-Pro? dual firing from the bottom and from the earpiece. Your low end coming from the bottom, your detail coming from the earpiece. Let's listen to a little bit of dialogue real quick.
And in the past, when stepping...
Yeah, it's all there. Okay, so I'm satisfied with that. I'd say that one might be a little tiny touch louder. What is the story with these two devices? How do you compare? How do you figure out which of these is right for you? Because you're checking it out. You're trying to figure it out. You don't have them in your hand, so I'm trying to be useful here for you. Obviously, I'm attracted to the Pro model. It's got the Pro title. It's got the Pro designation. It seems simple. It's straightforward. It's got the warp charge on the wireless. I've been talking about wireless charging for a couple thousand years. That said, somehow the non-Pro model feels like a slightly more finished product in your hand. What a bizarre thing to say. It's a little less jaggedy. It's a little more smooth around the edges. The balance of it just feels more polished. Maybe that's why they made it. Maybe that's why they're so close in price. I feel like if you held both of these phones, you definitely wouldn't feel like you were taking a step back with the non-Pro variant. That said, it's only $100 difference, which is kind of a weird difference. It's like if you're already spending $800, $700, you're in the territory, you're in the Pro model area, you're in the Pro model arena, and do you really not want to have the Pro model? The only reason I could really see going for the non-Pro seriously is if your number one concern is single-handed functionality and the comfort of an incredibly slender phone. You got to remember, when I'm talking about form factor, I'm not just talking about the dimension this way. I'm talking about the overall volume of the device, and somehow with its extra slimness and just being trimmed a tiny bit in almost every direction,